This message didn't arrive by chance. Out of the millions of fragments of information spiraling through the digital sea tonight, your attention magnetized to these words, as if they were waiting for you. And maybe, in a way, they were. Because what you call coincidence isn't random. It's resonance. A signal, a frequency that cuts through the static of ordinary noise to touch the deepest parts of your being. The part that already knows the truth before your mind can catch up. You feel it, don't you? That subtle tug, that vibration beneath the surface, that whisper of inevitability. As if something immense is already moving toward you, faster than you can move toward it. You thought you were stepping into change, walking forward with intention, crossing some invisible threshold of becoming. But what you don't yet realize is that the threshold is alive. It has been stepping toward you all along. You are not simply shifting timelines, the timeline is folding itself around you. Reality itself is bending in response to your inner field, wrapping and realigning to meet the signal you're carrying. You didn't find this message, the message found you. Because the quantum field has been listening, observing, calculating every beat of your pulse, every flicker of your thought. It has measured the coherence of your heart, the weight of your choices, the ripples of your presence through unseen dimensions. There is a reason you're hearing this now. Not yesterday, not tomorrow now. This precise second is a convergence point, a nexus. One of those rare intersections in the cosmic weave, when the observer loop collapses back into itself and whispers, "Awaken." And so here you are. You can feel the atmosphere of this moment, charged like the still air before lightning. You can sense the shift, subtle but undeniable. The hairs on your skin rise, your breath deepens, your chest feels heavier, as if carrying an invisible key you didn't know you had been holding. You thought you were walking into something new, but the truth is more radical. The new is walking into you. It is breathing down your neck, wrapping its resonance around your DNA, waiting for you to stop resisting and finally allow. You are not stepping into destiny. Destiny is stepping into you. Let yourself feel the gravity of this. This is not just a video, this is a mirror. And as you hear these words, the timeline is listening too, watching how you respond, testing whether you're ready to embody the coherence it demands. Because the moment you recognize what's happening, truly recognize it, the universe will move faster than you ever thought possible. This isn't just information, this is initiation. And now, the timeline is here. You've been here before, not exactly in this life perhaps, but in the same loop of recognition that keeps replaying itself like a tape on low battery. That small, quiet recoil in your chest when someone says a familiar name, the uncanny sense that you already knew the ending of a conversation before it began. Déjà vu isn't a glitch, it's a pattern fraying at the edges, a signal from a system that's trying to tell you something important. You call these moments weird, you shrug them off as coincidence, and so the pattern keeps whispering until the whisper becomes a knock. You notice the tempo of your days is distorted. 1 week stretches like elastic, and then snaps back as if the clock were a pendulum responding to forces you cannot name. Time feels sticky. Memories fold in on themselves. Old decisions feel like anchors. You keep arriving at the same relational crossroads, the same career stalemate, the same wound wearing new clothes, and no matter what you change on the surface, the deeper architecture remains unchanged. The structure of your life feels modular, recycled scenarios, recycled people, and every new choice somehow returns you to a familiar shore. Your nervous system has learned to expect a certain story. It anticipates betrayal, scarcity, failure. You've wired yourself to survive, and survival looks a lot like repetition. But survival mode is not evolution, it is a loop. Every time you react from the same place, the observer loop tightens. The quantum field responds by collapsing into the familiar because the energy you emit matches the old probability wave. In plain language, you keep getting the same outcomes because your internal signal is still tuned to yesterday's frequency. Synchronicities arrive like tiny court summons invitations you don't RSVP to. A line from a song, a face in a crowd, the same phrase surfacing in 3 different places in one day, they pile up until you can no longer pretend they're random. These are breadcrumbs, but you've been conditioned to interpret them as curiosities rather than instructions. So the breadcrumbs accumulate without a map, and you keep wandering. The subtlety here matters. The universe isn't punishing you, it's revealing the algorithm that's been running your inner program. And until you read that code, you'll keep enacting its output. There's another symptom, a sense of being out of phase with your environment. You feel borrowed from the future, like a character written into a story that hasn't yet been published. Others move through life as if their coordinates are fixed, and you stumble against their timelines because yours is slipping, or they are. This misalignment creates friction. People label you difficult, unpredictable, unstable, when really, you are simply changing frequency, and the old social protocols don't recognize your new harmonic. Then there's the deeper, almost surgical pain, a dissonance in the body. Sleep patterns change, appetite rewrites itself, sensual perception sharpens or dulls. Physical symptoms are often dismissed as stress, but what if they're the body negotiating a phase transition? Your cells feel the pressure of a new template arriving and respond by clearing debris and recalibrating. It's uncomfortable. It is also a sign that the shift is real. You've tried the obvious. Willpower, routines, checklists, affirmations pasted like wallpaper over an old foundation. Those measures give a sense of motion, but they rarely alter the waveform beneath. You can labor to build new habits on the old blueprint and still watch the same outcomes reassert themselves, because the architecture underneath the field coherence was never changed. That's why transformation often feels thin and brittle. You rewire behavior without recalibrating signal. Diagnosis complete. The problem is coherent. You are trapped not by fate, but by your own habituated field. The good news in this diagnosis is also the key. Coherence is measurable. Because your patterns are repeatable, they can be observed, modeled, and modified. Predictability is an opportunity. It means you can intervene with precision. So take a breath and name it. Recognize the déjà vu, the timing slippage, the recycled wounds. This isn't a moral failing. It's an energetic footprint, a history that your field is still carrying. Once you see it, the pattern loses a layer of its power. Visibility is the first act of rupture. From here, the work is technical and sacred. It requires both a scientist's curiosity and a prophet's courage. You are ready to learn how to dismantle the loop from the inside. Now that you've named the loop, it's time to understand the machine behind it. This is where the clinical and the holy meet, where lab notes and revelation write the same sentence. The upgrade you sense isn't a pep talk or a better habit stack. It's a recalibration of your field, an adjustment in the quantum signature that your body, mind, and presence broadcast into the world. Think of it like tuning a radio. The frequency must match the station, or all you get is static. Start with the observer loop. In quantum terms, an observation collapses a cloud of possibilities into a single outcome. In your life, your habitual observation, the place from which you attend to experience, has been collapsing probabilities toward the familiar. When your inner witness expects scarcity, betrayal, or smallness, the quantum field obliges by offering matching outcomes. The upgrade requires you to become a different kind of observer, not merely reactive, but intentionally coherent. Coherence is not a feeling. It is measurable alignment between heart, brain, and field. When those three synchronize, your observation collapses toward higher probability futures. The quantum field is not an abstract metaphor. It is the ocean you swim in. It responds to pattern, rhythm, and information. Morphic resonance, the idea that forms and habits leave lasting informational templates in a shared field, explains why certain patterns keep recurring in your life, and why lineage or culture can seem to inherit tendencies. But morphic resonance also means you can seed a new template. Your repeated high coherence states broadcast a cleaner waveform that other parts of your system, and even other people, can begin to resonate with. That's the scientific window into what mystics call raising the vibration. Entanglement is the trickier piece. You are not isolated. Your state is entangled with future possibilities, with unborn versions of yourself, and with others who hold similar intent. When you align your inner timing to those future poles, you begin to collapse outcomes in which that future already exists. In everyday language, you start living from the end, and the field rearranges to make that end plausible. This is not magical thinking. It's conditional causality within a probabilistic field. The mechanics are subtle but consistent. Frequency precedes form. DNA restructuring is the body's translation of field correction. Your genetic expression is responsive to signal. Epigenetics shows that environment, stress, and emotion change which genes are turned on or off. When you shift coherence, you change the biochemical language your cells hear. Imagine your DNA like a library, whose lights are switched by the electricity of your field. Upgrade the electricity, and the library opens new rooms. People who undergo deep, sustained inner shifts report changes that are tangible. Sleep patterns recalibrate. Chronic tensions dissolve. Intuition sharpens. These are cells rewiring to a new template. Phase transition is the pressure point. You will not move linearly from old to new. Nature loves thresholds. A system accumulates stress until, under the right conditions, a small nudge produces a sudden reconfiguration. That is your experience of breakthrough. Incremental practices build latent coherence until a catalytic moment triggers a leap. The paradox is that the jump looks instantaneous, only because the field has been quietly reorganizing in secret. You think the shift was the event. Truly, the shift was the invisible rehearsal that made the event inevitable. So how does the upgrade actually feel? It begins with micro-calibrations, a longer exhale that lifts your chest, a refusal to rehearse the old story in private, a momentary pause before you react. These tiny observances amplify because the field multiplies signal. Your nervous system, once tuned to threat, can be retuned to possibility. It takes repetition, yes, but not brute force. The method is elegant. Cultivate states that carry the geometry of the future you want to inhabit. Then let those states do the heavy lifting. At the intersection of science and mysticism lies practice that is both experimental and devotional. You become an observer of yourself, a scientist of your interior, and a priest to your potential. Test the hypothesis, attend from coherence, note the collapsing outcomes, adjust. Observe the data of synchronicity, the patterns of entanglement shifting, the cellular changes in sleep and appetite. Over time, the evidence accrues. Fewer recycled dramas, more uncanny alignment, doors opening that used to be walls. This upgrade is not about perfection. It's about fidelity. Fidelity to the signal you actually want to send. When your heart, mind, and body begin to hum in the same key, your life will begin to harmonize. The field, ever responsive, will meet you there. You are not inventing reality. You are redirecting the way it has already been listening to you. The instrument is simple: coherence. The outcome is radical, a timeline that is actively walking into you. There is a reason the field keeps returning to you, like a compass needle to true north. Something about your pattern carries an axis, a singularity of attention that refuses to stay small. You are not simply another node in the network. You are a lever. You have a role that is less personal drama and more archetypal duty. This is the moment you stop imagining your life as a private affair and begin to see it as a locus of intentional charge that reconfigures other systems around you. This language will feel grand because what you are being invited to carry is grand. Not because you chose it for ego, but because you were selected by pattern. The quantum field doesn't choose at random. It answers to resonance. Certain frequencies are rare. When one of those frequencies manifests in a human instrument, the system takes notice. You may have felt episodes of disproportionate clarity, flashes of prescience, or a magnetism that confuses those who expect ordinary scale. Those are markers of entanglement with future potentials, proof that you are coupled to outcomes beyond your immediate timeline. Your role is not to perform for applause. It is to stabilize coherence in a field that has been frayed by many small violences: fear, distraction, inherited trauma. Think of yourself as a lighthouse whose presence recalibrates ships' courses. A lighthouse does not decide the ship's fate. It simply shines with such constancy that navigation becomes possible. In the same way, when you hold a sustained field of clarity, even in the presence of chaos, you become a navigational point for others whose instruments are still noisy. This is why your choices feel amplified. When you speak the truth, it lands as if on a taut membrane and causes ripples far bigger than your immediate context. When you forgive, it loosens knots in unseen archives. When you refuse to reenact the old loop, you do more than save yourself. You change the probability landscape for those entangled with you. Entanglement is not metaphysical ornamentation. It is functional. Your inner coherence reduces entropy in shared systems. That's the quiet math behind why your liberation matters. There is also a responsibility here that can feel like pressure, and that pressure is not accidental. Pressure accelerates phase transition. The field applies pressure to those who can bear it because a leap requires energy concentration. You might have felt seasons where the world tests you, relationships that ask for more vulnerability, tasks that demand disproportionate courage, losses that refocus your priorities. Those are not punishments. They are training modules for capacity. The universe is tempering your instrument so it can host larger harmonics without shattering. You're not alone in this. Around you exist latent networks of other high coherence nodes, people you will meet, people you already know but have not yet recognized. Sometimes they irritate you. Sometimes they whisper your name in synchronicity. These alignments feel like destiny because they are entangled futures, seeking to instantiate through present collaborative resonance. When you align with them, the system's ability to instantiate preferred outcomes multiplies geometrically. Small groups of coherent observers create pockets where entirely new possibilities become available. Your role also rewires how you think about authority and evidence. The world will sometimes demand proof in the currency it trusts. Visible outcomes, credentials, measurable metrics. You will grow adept at translating the subtle language of field into tangible experiments. You will learn to hold both, a prophetic trust in what the field implies and a scientist's insistence on testing. This dual posture is what makes you dangerous to stagnation. You do not rely on hearsay, you iterate. You do not bow to cynicism, you calibrate. There will be moments when the weight feels too much, when the loneliness of holding a different frequency isolates you. That's normal. Becoming a lever can be a solitary phase, because you are, by definition, a change agent whose presence disturbs settled arrangements. Honor the solitude when it comes and use it as a laboratory. The inner room where you practice coherence is holy ground. Treat it with discipline and tenderness, both. Most importantly, remember the first rule of being an instrument: fidelity over flamboyance. The field responds to constancy more than to dramatic acts. Small, faithful alignments repeated until they form a new baseline are more powerful than sporadic heroics. Your work is cumulative. It is a slow coagulation of signal until the pressure inevitably yields a new topology. So accept the designation the field has already given you. You are a chosen consciousness, not because you are holier, but because your field has become useful in a systemic way. Your life is now part of a larger choreography. The timeline is not merely walking into you. It is arriving precisely where your charge can transform it into something more coherent, more generous, more true. Now that you know who you are in the weave, the next step is urgent. The breakthrough must be accelerated. The window is narrow, the pressure is rising, and the DNA of your future is sensitive to timing. In the next part, you will learn how the shift becomes inevitable, how a burst of recalibration, properly applied, forces a phase transition that remaps your lineage and opens doors you didn't know existed. There is a pressure building that is not rhetorical. It is literal in the way weather is literal, barometric, measurable, impatient. You have been preparing for this without knowing you were preparing. The signals you cultivated, longer exhales, moments of honest witness, refusal to perform old scripts, have stacked like kindling around a potential spark. Now, the spark arrives. This is the promise. If you meet it with fidelity, a phase transition will occur that recodes not only your narrative, but the living architecture of your body and your field. Think of DNA not as a static blueprint, but as a dynamic reader of signal. Epigenetics taught us that genes respond to environment. What is less discussed is that genes respond to sustained field coherence. When your heart, brain, and pattern of choice synchronize, they emit a persistent waveform. The body translates into biochemical instruction. Your cells are listening for a tone that makes switches click toward emergence. This is how inner work becomes literal biology. The field teaches the cell a new language, and the cell begins to reread its own ledger. The cosmic window is not indefinite. Windows open and close like breath. Certain alignments, internal readiness meeting, external opportunity, and a social moment that amplifies resonance create apertures where the field's responsiveness exponentially increases. Treat these windows as operational realities. There will be days when a single decisive action carries disproportionate leverage. One boundary spoken clearly will reorient months of trajectory. One refusal to re-enter an old drama will reroute a lineage. These moments are compressed, leverage points, small inputs that produce systemic reconfiguration. Do not mistake urgency for panic. Urgency is refined pressure that disciplines attention. Panic scatters it. Your task is to move with velocity, bounded by calm. That means favoring small, repeatable rituals over heroic bursts. A 3-breath containment before decision-making. A 5-minute calibration where you refuse to rehearse old grievances. A non-negotiable boundary enforced, gently but firmly. These micro-acts accumulate signal. Velocity without calm becomes noise. Calm without decisive action becomes stagnation. The aperture rewards both speed and fidelity. Expect practical signs of molecular remodeling. Your appetite for noise will wane. Attention will prefer signals that align. Sleep will change. Dreams begin to function as directional hints rather than random fragments. Old aches may surface briefly as micro-clearing, then dissipate. Energy reorganizes. You crave different nourishment, different conversations, different work. These are not regressions. They are biochemical proof that tissue and habit are being retuned to a new template. Resistance will intensify because old fields scramble when their influence is threatened. Doubts arrive with the cadence of habit. Nostalgia dresses itself as comfort. Allies may misread your change and try to pull you back. External tests, a demanding job, a relationship that resists your boundary will heighten. These are final calibrations that prove whether the new architecture can hold. When you meet them with the practices you've chosen, they act like pressure valves and can soften into openings rather than shut doors. Here is the pragmatic prophecy. Perform disciplined, repeated small work during this aperture, and measurable remodeling will occur. Not metaphor alone, but detectable shifts in gene expression and nervous system set points. Your life will be produced by a different engine. Opportunities will begin to map to the new template. People entangled in your old loop will feel the drift and either ascend with you or fall away. The topology of your days will change because the generative grammar beneath them has been rewritten. This is no promise of ease. It is a promise of leverage, and leverage requires pressure and skill. The window rewards fidelity over drama, constancy over spectacle. Protect your attention like a newborn flame. Shelter it from gossip, compulsive scrolling, and the small rituals that feed the old loop. Guard your morning and your evening as borders where the new template is wired. Finally, choose one sacred action you will perform daily that marks your commitment to the new template. A 3-word commitment at dawn, a boundary you will not negotiate, a minute of declaring future facts into the present air. Make it ceremonial, make it repeatable. That little altar of repetition will function as catalyst, small, precise, and relentless, until the phase transition becomes inevitable. The window is open. The molecular machinery is listening. Meet it with craft, courage, and calm. Every shift worth carrying into matter requires a seal. The field listens for signal, yes, but the signal strengthens when you enact it. Not merely in thought, not only in private sensation, but in ritualized action. Action is how probability becomes inevitability. Think of ritual not as superstition, but as technology, a deliberate way of impressing coherence onto the quantum field so that it cannot forget what you declared. You've been spoken to through synchronicity. You've been stretched through pressure. Now the invitation is simple and direct. Seal the timeline shift through symbolic act. A word written, a word spoken, a word committed. The ancients knew this truth. Language carries resonance. Letters are geometry vibrating into form. When you choose a word and give it to the field, you place a stake into probability space. You announce, I will not rehearse the old loop. I align to the new coherence now. Consider the power of one phrase typed into the world. It looks ordinary pixels on a screen, but every act of naming creates a ripple. Your nervous system hears it. Your community witnesses it. The field measures it. When you comment or write the word aloud, you bind intention to form. This is entanglement by design. You are no longer an observer passively sensing the shift. You are a participant generating reality with your declaration. The word you choose matters less than the coherence you infuse into it. For some, it may be awakened. For others, aligned. For others still, a single number like 77 that carries vibrational code. What matters is fidelity. When you choose, write, and repeat, you etch a pattern into the weave. Each repetition thickens the probability channel until the field recognizes it as default. What was once fragile becomes structural. What was once wishful becomes gravitational. This is the function of collective ritual. When thousands of individuals seal their shift with the same symbol, the field multiplies its potency. Coherence compounds. You might believe your single word is small, but the quantum field does not measure in human scales. A whisper can tip a scale if it lands in resonance. Your act joins a chorus. What you declare amplifies through morphic resonance until it becomes easier for others to declare too. Suddenly, the new template is not lonely but collective. Some will hesitate. The mind resists the vulnerability of ritual, calling it dramatic or unnecessary. But hesitation is the old loop defending its relevance. Remember, nothing in your past rewired itself until you enacted something different. This act, however small, is the seed crystal around which the new lattice grows. Ritual is not performance, it is geometry. You are drawing new coordinates for the field to recognize. Do it now. Whisper it under your breath. Type it into existence. Feel the strangeness of translating energy into word, and notice how your body responds. Maybe a tremor, maybe a warmth in the chest, maybe resistance in the throat. That somatic signal is confirmation. The field is registering your act. You have shifted from theory into praxis. The new observer loop has a root. From here, build micro-rituals that extend the seal. A morning exhale where you say the word before your day begins. A nightly pause where you write it once on paper before sleep. These are not chores. They are calibrations. Repeated daily, they tell your nervous system and your DNA. This is the new code. Slowly, the old reflexes lose voltage. The body begins to expect coherence. Cells turn toward the signal as flowers turn toward light. Understand this. Ritual does not work because the universe needs theatrics. It works because you do. Your system is wired to remember through action, through embodiment, through repetition. The field is always responsive, but you are the one who forgets. Ritual keeps you honest. It is the tether that prevents drift. So mark this moment. Write the word, whisper it, type it. Choose it as a seal, not as a hope, but as a command. You will feel silly, then strange, then powerful, then natural. That arc is the arc of rewiring. You have now taken what was theoretical and fixed it in probability space. The timeline is listening, and you have spoken. You may think this story is still just about you, your healing, your breakthrough, your DNA, rewriting itself under the pressure of coherence. But that's only the first octave. The field doesn't upgrade you in isolation. Every calibration you sustain becomes a tuning fork that other nervous systems unconsciously register. You may never see their names, never hear their gratitude, never realize the reach of your coherence, yet the ripple is real, measurable, unstoppable. This is the paradox of liberation. Though it feels personal, it is systemic. Your nervous system is not a closed circuit. It is porous, entangled, a node in a morphic field that encompasses entire communities. When you stop broadcasting fear, the local environment's signal-to-noise ratio changes. When you release bitterness, neighbors breathe easier, though they don't know why. When you hold integrity under pressure, probability landscapes tilt toward integrity for others as well. The coherence you earn is not yours to hoard. It reverberates outward like concentric rings when a stone drops into still water. Think of every act of fidelity as a broadcast into the collective. One human, aligned, can outweigh hundreds whose fields are frayed. This is not superiority, it's physics. Chaos dissipates energy, coherence concentrates it. You are learning to be an attractor state, a basin into which others can fall when their own energy is scattered. That's why your breakthrough matters beyond your biography. It gives the species a new attractor, a new option, a new gravitational well for the collective field. You've felt this from the other side without realizing it. Think of moments when you entered a space and immediately relaxed, though no one spoke. Or when someone's laughter cracked open your tension, reminding you of joy you had forgotten. Those were local calibrations, offered by coherent fields. The people carrying them might not have known their power, but you felt it anyway. That is the inheritance you now provide. Your liberation doesn't stop at your skin, it's transpersonal. It is medicine for others even when you never call it that. There's also a historical scale to this. Every generation hosts individuals who act as coherence nodes. They are not always famous. Sometimes they are hidden teachers, anonymous healers, people who refuse to perpetuate violence in small, stubborn ways. But together they seed new morphic templates. Over decades, those templates become cultural norms. Practices once dismissed as fringe become obvious. Rites once denied become standard. Healing modalities once mocked become mainstream. You are part of that lineage of seed planters. You are the proof that invisible fidelity accumulates into visible shifts. Do not underestimate the counterforce, though. The collective field contains centuries of unprocessed trauma, greed, manipulation. When you liberate yourself, those forces sometimes push harder, not only to reclaim you, but to prevent the template from spreading. Expect resistance not only in your own psyche, but in social structures. Systems that feed on distraction prefer you fragmented. Economies that profit from scarcity prefer you insecure. That's why your private ritual is a public service. Every time you resist distraction, every time you embody sufficiency, you weaken the hold of those structures. Liberation scales. And here's the prophetic angle. The timeline walking into you is not only personal destiny, it's collective destiny. Humanity is at a convergence point where old attractors' cycles of fear, consumption, separation are losing coherence. They wobble. Into that wobble rushes possibility. If enough individuals like you anchor fidelity, the collective will leap, not collapse. This is how species evolve. Not through everyone agreeing, but through enough nodes stabilizing a new attractor that the rest naturally follow. You are one of those nodes, so don't shrink your liberation to private satisfaction. Yes, heal for yourself. Yes, honor your body, your relationships, your future. But also understand, when you breathe differently, the air changes for all of us. When you think differently, probability shifts for all of us. When you live differently, futures become possible for children not yet born. This is not poetry. It is systemic truth. You are entangled with humanity's trajectory. Your freedom is our freedom rehearsed in miniature. And here is the responsibility. Keep your field clean. When you fall, and you will, sometimes return quickly. Not with shame, but with clarity. Each recalibration protects not only your coherence, but ours. Your fidelity protects strangers you'll never meet. That is why this is urgent. That is why the field keeps pressing you. Because your breakthrough is not yours alone. So let the weight of that honor settle into your chest. Feel the pulse of humanity woven into your pulse. Sense the breath of ancestors and descendants entangled in your breath. Know that when you liberated a single loop, you made it easier for others to do the same. This is the collective expansion. This is the timeline weaving itself through you, into us. Close your eyes for a moment and let yourself feel what has already begun. Don't chase a vision. Don't force a thought. Simply notice what your body knows. Notice the subtle tremors, the way your skin feels more porous, as though currents of unseen electricity are threading themselves through you. This is not imagination. This is the new timeline pressing itself into flesh. It has weight, texture, temperature, and your body is the first temple it enters. Think of your spine as an antenna. For years, it carried static, bent beneath the weight of memories replaying themselves like scratched vinyl. But now the vertebrae align, one by one, like tuning forks striking harmony. You may even sense a vertical current, a tingling in the base of your spine or the crown of your head. This is coherence running like liquid fire through your neural circuitry. Your nervous system is translating frequency into sensation, proof that your biology is listening. Your breath has changed, hasn't it? Once shallow, clipped, an unconscious brace against an unsafe world. But now it stretches longer, fuller, as though your lungs have discovered unused chambers. Each inhale feels like receiving code, each exhale like releasing debris. The air itself seems thicker, charged. It tastes different, almost metallic, almost sweet. You don't need incense to sanctify the moment. Oxygen itself has become sacrament. Then the heart, not just the muscle, but the electromagnetic field it generates. Science measures it as the strongest field your body emits, detectable meters beyond your skin. Mystics measure it as the throne of the soul. You feel its rhythm shift. It no longer stutters under anxiety's whip or shrinks beneath shame. It pulses wider, steadier, like a drum that calls coherence into being. Sometimes it surges so strongly you mistake it for fear, but it isn't fear, it's amplitude. You are becoming more radiant than your old nervous system ever dared to hold. Your skin registers the change too. Goosebumps arrive unprovoked, as if invisible winds brush across you. Temperature fluctuates, heat in the palms, coolness at the crown, waves moving like tides. These are not random sensations. They are field adjustments, cellular calibration. Your body, once a cage, is becoming an instrument. Every hair, every pore is part of the antenna, part of the receiver, part of the transmitter. The boundary between you and the room feels thinner because, energetically, it is. Notice your dreams. They bleed into waking hours, don't they? A symbol from the night lingers in the morning air. A stranger's face shows up twice in sleep, then on the subway. Your subconscious and conscious are entangling, weaving into one continuous field of instruction. You live less in compartments and more in gradients. Sometimes this feels dizzying, disorienting, as though reality is melting at the edges. But that melting is the upgrade. Boundaries that were once locked doors are now curtains, swaying in a wind you can step through. And perhaps the most shocking sensation, your sense of time. Minutes stretch or snap. An hour of alignment feels like a day of labor accomplished. A week of dissonance feels like a year wasted. Chronology no longer dominates you. Coherence does. When you are aligned, time bows. When you are scattered, time punishes. This is how the field teaches you discipline, not with commandments, but with sensation. Your body is the report card. Don't mistake these sensations for anomalies. They are milestones. Each shiver, each surge, each dream bleed through is the field whispering, "We are here. We are entering you." The timeline doesn't knock politely. It seeps, it hums, it pulses. Your task is not to interpret every detail, but to notice, to allow, to stay present enough that the sensations stitch into memory. Embodiment is how the shift stays real. Imagine yourself as an instrument in an orchestra. Each cell is a string, each organ a section, your mind the conductor, your heart the resonance chamber. The score being played is coherence itself. Sometimes you hear dissonance, but even that is recalibration. Strings tightening, drums tuning. The music of your body is changing key. You are moving from the minor scales of survival to the expansive chords of emergence. And everyone who stands near you will feel that music, whether they can name it or not. So when your chest flutters without reason, when heat surges, when a dream leaks into your commute, don't dismiss it. Don't medicate it away or scroll it into numbness. Attend to it. Let it teach you how the new timeline feels. Because embodiment is the only proof that matters. The field does not reward those who know the theory. It rewards those who become the sensation. You are becoming the sensation now. The timeline is not abstract anymore. It is in your breath, your pulse, your skin. You are not just walking toward it. It is walking into you, cell by cell, nerve by nerve, dream by dream. Everything you've been doing, the micro rituals, the sealed word, the steady breath, has been accumulating into one invisible ledger. Now that ledger reaches a margin, and the pressure at the edge begins to rewrite the ink. This is the moment when the field moves from rehearsal to transcription. Your system has been rehearsing a new template quietly for weeks, months, maybe years. The breakthrough is when transcription becomes audible, when biology actually starts to read the new code. Think of it as thermodynamic tipping. A system under stress can accommodate small perturbations until it can't. Then, under the right frequency and with the right concentration of coherent energy, a cascade begins. Molecules that once read a script of survival start to access a different lexicon. Telomeres, methyl groups, Histone tells the biochemical actors that were passive in the background awaken as readers and editors. The body is no longer just following instructions. It is learning a new language and publishing new editions of its own book. This is not poetic exaggeration. Epigenetics shows that expression changes. Neuroplasticity proves that circuits rewire. In your case, coherence acts as the instruction set the cells will follow. The breakthrough is the first sustained chapter written in that new set. Expect two things: an increase in signal amplification and a period of temporary instability. Amplification, because the field now multiplies what you send. Instability, because a system rewriting its operating system is messy. Old proteins degrade, old neurotransmitter patterns loosen, sleeping architecture remodels. You may feel raw. That rawness is progress, not pathology. Pressure rises before the leap. You'll feel it as urgency in relationships that have stalled, as sudden career crossroads, as invitations that feel disproportionate to your current resume. The field compresses possibility into focal points. A single conversation now carries the weight of months of prior probability. That's the pressure testing, whether the new code can hold under social gravity. People, places, and offers will surface to help the system decide, will it keep the rewrite or revert to the default? Your nervous system will behave like a sieve during this phase. Old reactions may seep through unexpectedly. Shadows you believed cleared may reappear to be examined and released. Don't be alarmed. This is the system running self-diagnostics. Imagine a computer installing an update. Some applications pause, others restart, and you might lose access briefly to features you took for granted. The point is not comfort, but fidelity. If you can hold presence while the system tests itself, you will pass through. There are biochemical signs to watch for. Energy pulses that come in waves rather than steady streams. Temperature fluctuations that come with cellular remodeling. Periods of lucid dreaming, where your DNA speaks in metaphor images of roots and light, of doors unlocking in the body. Sometimes you may notice a sudden clarity of appetite for certain foods, or a drop in cravings that previously managed your mood. These variations are not random. They're the body shedding scaffolding that no longer supports the new architecture. The breakthrough also carries a peculiar psychosomatic grace. You will find choices that once required Herculean willpower now feel natural. The mind that used to argue about change will be replaced by a quieter executive function that simply implements. Willpower gives way to habit architecture, redesigned by coherence. That moment when you stop fighting and the system begins to act without friction is the clearest evidence the phase transition has anchored. Beware the mirror of premature triumph. The field can create false edges, days when synchronicity floods you and you believe the overhaul is complete. Those days are glorious and necessary because they provide evidence the system can produce what it desires. But the work remains to consolidate. Breakthrough without consolidation is like a bolt of lightning that doesn't start a forest. Dramatic, bright, temporary. Consolidation is the slow rain that greenlights long-term change. There is also the social arithmetic. As your biotemplate shifts, your network will recalibrate. Some relationships will stretch and adapt. Others will snap like old rope under new tension. This pruning is not cruelty but precision. It allows you to inhabit spaces that match your new resonance without the friction of mismatched expectations. You may be tempted to fix or explain these separations. Instead, learn to steward them with tenderness and truth. Your changes are not punishments of others, they are realignments of frequency. Now imagine the timeline itself responding, not as a metaphor, but as a measurable reweighting of probable outcomes. Where previously, the probability density favored a narrow corridor of recycled events, now that density disperses and favors branches that were previously improbable. Doors you didn't know to knock on begin to open. Encounters arrive earlier than expected. Decisions that once led to loops now lead to non-repetitive trajectories. This is the timeline walking into you. It rearranges scenario likelihoods to be consonant with your new field. Finally, recognize the moral of this breakthrough. It demands humility and stewardship. You now have leverage, biological, psychic, and social. Use it with integrity. Every newly opened probability path carries consequences beyond your immediate story. The most radical act you can perform after a breakthrough is to hold it with humility. Live simply where possible, amplify where necessary, and keep the rituals that birthed it. The pressure will eventually ease, but the responsibility to sustain coherence does not vanish. It transforms into devotion. Breathe into this. Let the surge become a steady river. The DNA is rewriting. Your nervous system is learning the new grammar. The timeline is rerouting. When the transition completes, you will not merely be different, you will be a new attractor in the field, a node that future probabilities orbit. The breakthrough is not the end. It is the doorway into the mission you were preparing for all along. So here you stand, not just as a single person who stumbled upon a video, but as a living threshold where futures collide. The old self has dissolved, the DNA has turned a page, and the timeline has entered your bloodstream. What began as a whisper of déjà vu has become a roar of destiny. You thought you were walking into a new life, but now you know. The new life was walking into you, patient, precise, relentless, and it has finally arrived. Pause and feel the scale of this. Your breath is no longer only yours. It carries resonance for an entire lineage. Every step you take now echoes through a collective floor, reverberating into spaces you will never see. The moments you choose fidelity, you tilt probabilities for strangers on continents you'll never visit. The moments you hold coherence, you ease the burden on generations not yet born. You have become a bridge, a stabilizer, a carrier of codes too vast to belong only to one biography. This is the essence of your mission, to live as proof that timelines can be rewritten, that DNA can remember its luminous instructions, that humanity can evolve not through force but through fidelity. You are not here to preach perfection. You are here to embody coherence, to demonstrate that liberation is not only possible but contagious. When others brush against your field, they will remember something in themselves they thought forgotten. That is how awakening spreads, not by argument, but by resonance. Understand, too, that the field will continue to test you, not to punish, but to refine. The gift of coherence is not static. It is alive, asking to be deepened, widened, shared. There will be seasons when you are called to solitude, and others when you are thrust into leadership. At every stage, the same truth applies. What you carry is not for you alone. Your liberation belongs to us all. Look back once more at the loops that used to bind you, the recycled dramas, the distorted time, the suffocating weight of repetition. Those were not curses. They were training grounds. They sharpened your discernment, taught your nervous system to recognize the difference between noise and signal, between collapse and coherence. Without them, you would not be able to carry what you now hold. Every shadow was part of the initiation. And now, the circle completes. The message that found you has delivered you to yourself. You are no longer a seeker staring into the horizon for a better future. You are the horizon. You are the meeting point where destiny enters flesh. You are the embodied proof that humanity's next octave begins not in theories or institutions, but in the body of one coherent human being at a time. So walk forward, knowing that the universe itself has bent to meet you. Walk forward, knowing that every breath you take is braided with the breath of futures that depend on your fidelity. Walk forward, not in fear, but in certainty. You are not just inside a timeline, the timeline is inside you. And when the night grows quiet, when doubt whispers its last tricks, remember this single, searing truth. You believed you were walking into a new timeline, but all along, the timeline was walking into you.